On the border between India and Bangladesh, there is a village called Dahala Khagrabari. It's not special, a few dozen houses, some farms, a pond or two. But if you were to walk to the edge of this village and keep walking, you would cross an international border. Then, if you kept walking a bit further, you'd cross another border. And if you kept going just a little further, less than a kilometer, you'd cross a third border. You would have crossed 3 international borders in a 10-minute walk through the same village. Because Dahala Khagrabari was an Indian enclave inside a Bangladeshi enclave inside an Indian enclave inside Bangladesh. For over 60 years, 51,000 people lived inside these tiny, scattered pieces of one country completely surrounded by another. They had no roads to their own nation. No schools. No hospitals. No police. No electricity. They were marooned on islands of land in a sea of another country. This is the story of the world's most absurd border. And how it was finally erased. To understand this mess, we have to go back to the year 1947. When the British Empire left India, they didn't just leave one country, they carved the subcontinent into two, India and Pakistan. But the partition of India was one of the messiest divorces in history. The border was drawn in just 5 weeks by a British lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe, a man who had never been to India before and who, by his own admission, had no knowledge of its geography. Radcliffe had to divide 175 million people using outdated maps and census data. He drew a line straight through villages, through farms, through people's backyards. He didn't have time to deal with every little detail. And in one specific region, the ancient kingdom of Cooch Behar, in what is now the border between India and Bangladesh, Radcliffe's messy border created something unique. The local Maharaja had, over the centuries, signed various treaties with the British that created a bizarre patchwork of tiny territories. When Radcliffe drew his line, he didn't fully resolve these. He just left them. The result, 197 pieces of India inside Bangladesh, and 71 pieces of Bangladesh inside India. Some were the size of a city. Some were the size of a single field. One was smaller than a football pitch. Life in the enclaves was surreal. Imagine being born in a house that is legally in India, but every road leading out of your village goes into Bangladesh. To go to your own country, you'd have to commit border crossing. There were no border posts inside the enclaves. No customs. No immigration officers. The enclaves were so small and so remote that neither country actually governed them. There were no schools. No hospitals. No police. No postal service. No electricity grid. No running water. If someone committed a crime in an enclave, they could simply walk 5 minutes into the surrounding country and vanish. The people of the enclaves became known as stateless, belonging to a country that couldn't reach them, living in a country that didn't consider them citizens. To get basic goods, they developed an underground economy. Smugglers brought rice, medicine, cloth, and cooking oil across the invisible borders. The entire enclave system survived on smuggling. And then there was the absurdity of Dahala Khagrabari, the world's only third-order enclave. Imagine a matryoshka doll made of borders. You start in Bangladesh. You cross into an Indian enclave. Inside that enclave, there's a Bangladeshi counter-enclave. And inside that counter-enclave, there's an Indian counter-enclave. That was Dahala Khagrabari. It was the only place on earth where you could be inside one country, completely surrounded by another, that was itself completely surrounded by a third. A geopolitical matryoshka. For decades, both India and Bangladesh refused to acknowledge the enclaves. They appeared on no official government maps. They were a bureaucratic blind spot, a colonial-era error that nobody wanted to fix. For over 60 years, the enclave residents lived in limbo. But then, in 2015, something remarkable happened. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina agreed to do what no government had done since 1947, swap the enclaves. The Land Border Agreement of 2015 was simple in concept but monumental in execution. India would take the Bangladeshi enclaves on its side. Bangladesh would take the Indian enclaves on its side. Every resident would get to choose their citizenship. On July 31, 2015, at midnight, the enclave ceased to exist. After 68 years, the world's most complicated border was erased in a single moment. Over 50,000 people were finally given full citizenship rights. They got access to schools, hospitals, electricity, and roads for the first time in their lives. But the swap wasn't easy. Many enclave residents had to choose between two identities. Some chose India. Some chose Bangladesh. Families were divided. People who had lived on the same street for generations suddenly became citizens of different countries. One elderly woman, who had lived in an Indian enclave inside Bangladesh her entire life, told reporters, "I have never seen India. But I have always been Indian. Now I can finally go there legally." And Dahala Khagrabari, the world's only third-order enclave, simply became part of Bangladesh. The nesting doll was dismantled. Today, if you visit the border between India and Bangladesh, you'll see a clean line. No enclaves. No counter-enclaves. No geopolitical nesting dolls. But the echoes of those enclaves remain. People still remember. Villages still have names that sound like the other country. And somewhere in the green fields of what was once Cooch Behar, an old farmer might tell you about the time when the border ran through his kitchen. The world's strangest border exists because empires drew lines on maps without understanding what they were drawing through. And it was erased because two countries finally decided that people matter more than paper. If you found this story fascinating, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Every